That sound is the sound of a weaver at work. Up through that window. Hear it? Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Rajiv.
We're here to make a picture with you. About a weaver, a story about a weaver.
All right.
Deborah and I met at Pioneer Village 25 years ago.
Yes, when you were just a lad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deborah, you and I both left the village many, many years ago.
Yes.
And we've gone off and done our own things. But as with most people who worked at Pioneer Village, it did start something.
Yes.
And all these years later, decades later, to see where Deborah has taken that experience and how she's grown it into a full-fledged business, Upper Canada Weaving, it's been amazing to watch what you've done over the years. And what we've laid out is just a small sampling of Deborah's work. For me, what has been fascinating to see and also to use are these utilitarian textiles. So this shirt is cloth that Deborah wove. Deborah, can you tell us about the actual cloth, please?
Yeah. You know, this was kind of the beginning of a project that I started to research to make flannel. This is plain weave, this top one. And this one is twill, which is same as your shirt.
And this is the natural color of the sheep?
Yes.
It has not been dyed?
Not been dyed. It was kind of an unusual case that we had a fleece that was this kind of buttery yellow color.
I love that so much when we leave the fleece as is and in the finished textile, you really see the sheep because it's the color of the wool.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing, is to either use it undyed or kind of combine it with something that's dyed just to create some accents to it.
Now, speaking of dyes, Deborah has gone from weaving at a historic site to weaving things for film production, but she tries to really stay true to the historic inspiration for producing all of this cloth. And you work with someone fantastic who dyes the wool with natural dyes. Can you show us some of the things over here, Deborah, please?
For sure.
Because I just think these colors are incredible.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Liam Blackburn, whose company is called Iron Cauldron Colorworks. He's really my partner in crime. We work together. I couldn't achieve what I achieve without him. He just brings that element to every piece that I do that I want to do but don't have the know-how. With this cloth, we decided that we would do half of the wool. So for the warp, we would dye it yellow first. And then dip it into the indigo to get the green.
And the indigo is the blue dye.
Yes.
So yellow and blue make green.
Yes. And then for the weft, blue first. And then yellow.
Oh, yellow over top of the blue.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who might not know what indigo is this is natural indigo, right?
Yeah, Liam dyed this.
And guess who made that? When I saw this, I thought, oh, Deborah has an antique coverlet up for display. No, she doesn't. And the reason why this is like this is where you're going to cut it, right?
Yeah, that's going to be for the fringe.
This is the fringe.
Yeah.
So when Deborah weaves these things, I mean, when they come off the loom, you and I might not be able to understand what we're looking at.
Yeah.
But it's woven in a very methodical way for finishing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I did research on a weaver in Middlesex County in Ontario, and I looked at his account book, and
From
based on,
what year?
Oh, that was 1854 to 1885. And so in his account book, you can see that he was just doing the weaving and his customers were doing the finishing. So, and he did a lot of coverlets. So he would do a coverlet and then the customer would get it and do the finishing. So the knotting and then the sewing together of the panels.
Wow.
So that's what I always find so interesting. It was a real partnership. And sometimes the customers would do the dyeing too. And when you look at old coverlets, you can really see there's maybe a uniformity in the way it was woven, but the way it was finished, there seems to be kind of more variety because every household did their own finishing. So I'm just going to tell a little story about Rajiv's coverlet.
The nine roses for Miss Annie, or the other one?
Yeah, we can talk about that one, but let's talk about Keep Me Warm One Night.
Just while Deborah's getting the sample, look at the back. I mean, and this is a reversible coverlet, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
This is truly when I come to Toronto. Every time I'm in Toronto, I pay Deborah a visit, and it's like a spiritual experience. It really is. I think of the things that bring such value to my life, and even though this is not mine, to see it, like I walk away and I feel like I've eaten the most nourishing meal.
Oh,
truly.
Oh, you're so kind.
It's incredible.
So this was Rajiv's coverlet that you probably recognize from Rajiv's videos. So again, like your coverlet is wide.
Yeah.
So I did a test, but when we decided to do this, Rajiv wanted linen as the foundation, and he wanted black. So at first we were like, okay, we can dye black. And then I was just starting to get into working with a farmer who had sheep that had a variety of colors. And so I said to her, could I get wool like from your black sheep? And so if you can, maybe many of you can't imagine like a sheep out in the field, like you kind of just think of a black sheep, but the sheep do tend to get a little lightened from the sun. So the tips of their wool does tend to be brown, some of them. And so the farmer actually really had to select the blackest of the black to get it this black. So
when I placed the order with Deborah for this coverlet for my bed, it was really based on this book.
Yeah.
And it was based on the title. I didn't care what the pattern was.
Yeah.
But I did think that the title of this pattern is so sentimental.
Yeah.
And when I think of, because of knowing you and because you've actually created the possibility of reviving these things that were almost to me dead, I thought, wow, there's an opportunity here to actually cover myself every night with something that is truly meaningful to me and that will genuinely keep me warm. One night or two or three, and this is why I say it's like a spiritual experience to me, because it's not just a blanket, it's a work of art, but it is also just a blanket.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And getting back to your comment about utilitarian things.
Yes.
And I'm just going to circle back to what kind of inspired me.
Yes.
Yes.
The client-weaver relationship.
Yes. Okay. This is so precious. So Rajiv, working at Black Creek Pioneer Village, he loved spinning and dyeing. So he had this collection that he had amassed, and I actually knit a vest for you, right? And so I had a little extra left over. And so for Rajiv's coverlet, I did a kind of decorative band with some of your spinning and dyeing.
Yeah.
Because I thought, you know, Rajiv especially needs to be kind of in that customer relationship with the weaver. So
at the very top of the coverlet in New York, there's a red stripe, and at the very bottom there's a red stripe, and that's my hand spun wool, dyed with cochineal from those Border Leicester sheep at Black Creek.
Yeah,
it's it really is just so special and meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And it's light, but it's warm.
Yeah, it's a really clever technique. It's called float work, and it's just set up on 4 harnesses. So a harness is kind of like a frame that controls the movement of the threads.
Yes.
And so you kind of do the float.
Which is the dark color.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the float over there. And all these floats. But if you can imagine these floats just existing on their own, there'd be no structure. So between every one of these decorative floats, there's a thread of plain weave. And that's kind of like the sandwich that keeps everything together.
Yep. Like it feels spongy.
Yeah, it does.
Like it
Yeah.
feels like you could press it and there's a bounce to it.
Yes.
Which makes sense.
Which enhances the warmth too,
Exactly.
because those little nuggets in there
They hold
trap
the-
the heat. And
Yeah.
so it's got a really nice texture to it. And it was that coverlet technique that was easiest for most people to make. So people, domestic weavers, could also make this. It could be made by a professional weaver. And often, I think we talked about this when we kind of decided on this design, that the domestic weaver tended just to do the pattern. So you would have a coverlet with just the wheel and the table. But the professional would just put a little bit of a flair on that by doing a border.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
The domestic would end here.
Yeah.
Whereas this,
Yeah, because it's just a little bit more figuring out to do. So, yeah. So that's just a little touch that gives it a little bit of a flair to it.
now, fiber and the content of the fiber.
Right.
One of the things that I think people who aren't familiar with this stuff might not realize is that when we talk about this being warm and creating those little pockets, like although it's a patterned thing, technically it's functioning to keep the user warm. These textiles were designed to be made out of natural fibers. Like I encourage everyone to think about that when they're acquiring clothing, and to look at the content of the fiber of something that they're acquiring. If it's natural fibers, it's so much more comfortable to wear.
And when you think about a garment or something for the interiors, like for me, I see it, it's brand new, it's going to last for years and years and years, but there kind of has to be a plan in place for when it's no longer viable. And so something like this, it's, it's very old, it's weak, it's almost at the end of its life. What are you going to do with it? Well, if you want, you can compost it because it's going to biodegrade. It's all natural fibers. With something that's synthetic, it's going to stay around on our planet for many, many years to come and just be a burden. But this is something that will go back and enrich the soil even. So I guess as a designer, I'm always thinking about the end game for my textile, and I don't want something in it that's going to be harmful to the planet. And so my stuff is 100% natural fibers. I refuse to use synthetics for anything. Even the cotton that I use to sew my hems, I use cotton thread, because when this dies, I want it to be able just to revert back to soil, what it was. Actually, I was in a video where they insisted that you do that.
The clap, they use it for the editors.
Okay, guys,
Like,
do your
clap.
clap now.
Okay,
I
clap.
just reminded.
There. Okay. How's the hair doing? Is it kind of crazy?
I'm very envious.
Ugh.
I'm telling you.
I know, me too. Give it a little bit more. Now it's a bit crazy at the
We need a pss, pss, pss.
No, because it doesn't listen with this. It just. Anyways.
Can you leave it? It's good.
You're so lucky.
I agree.
Okay. So
toweling.
Oh, toweling.
Toweling has been
Yes.
something that has really enriched my life in my apartment. Look at how beautiful these are. So, Deborah, these are all cotton, right?
Oh, yes. They're all cotton right down to the hem.
And then these are
Linen.
these all linen?
All linen. Yeah. Both of them look nice. Like after, you use it and it's wet and everything, and then you squeeze it out and then lay it out to dry. And they still look sort of pretty.
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
the thing about this previous iteration of the dishcloth. It never looked pretty. It was just kind of functional and ratty.
Yeah.
But these I find just over my beautiful
Oh, yes.
ceramic sink, like when it's sitting there, it's a beautiful thing. And all of this is hand woven.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
yeah,
I don't think I said that. Like when we talk about weaving, Deborah's going like this on the loom. Those forearms must be strong. So these are the dishcloths. And then I ordered some towels from Deborah,
Right.
like actual hand towels.
That
for
was
the kitchen.
early.
Very early, before these.
Yeah.
That was what we ended up with.
Do you
Look at-
remember that day when you saw that little swatch of fabric?
Yeah, I went crazy.
Yeah, I had like a little sample that I had done, and your eye, like Rajiv's eye always goes to the nicest thing. And so I was like, zoom. And he said, could I have that pattern?
I can't believe you made this. This looks like silk. This is linen.
It's a nice linen. It's called long line linen. So you know how the linen plant is like, 4 feet tall. It's got that pretty blue flower.
So for those of you who don't know, linen comes from flax.
Yeah, flax.
So if you eat flaxseed or flaxseed
Yes.
oil, it's the same plant, and it grows as a stalk, and on the inside of
Is the fiber.
this fiber. So long
Long line.
line
Yeah,
linen.
and
This thing.
back in the 19th century, there were like Ireland, Belgium was really renowned for spinning the linen. But it's kind of become a bit of a lost art. So this linen that I get from India.
Really?
Because, yeah, they're still spinning the long line linen in India. And in Eastern Europe too, you can get it, but you really notice the difference with this, the long line linen, to this, which is more, it's rougher. You can feel it's rougher, and it's the shorter pieces and a bit of like the fluff that comes off of the linen, and that's
I love this too.
tow.
The towel. I was
Yeah.
going to say, is that towel?
Yeah,
That's
it's
what they're
towel.
called, towel.
Yeah.
So Deborah, I think I recall that this pattern, was this old?
Yeah,
Like
it's
really
an old
old
pattern. Yeah.
What's it called?
I don't know what it's called, but you see it in 19th century textiles. So I have a friend who has a collection of textiles, and she had an old 19th century towel, and so I looked at it and wanted to recreate the pattern. So it's a very showy towel. It's not your everyday kind of towel, but
Oh, it's my
nice-
everyday towel.
Well,
to tell
that's
you that
good.
much.
I'm glad.
I have
Actually,
10 of them, and I've been using them every day for 10 years.
You know what?
Everyday towel.
As I was saying that, I was thinking, you're right. Like nice things should not be put in a drawer and only used 2 days of the year. So it's nice to have good things, appreciate them, but like we were saying, when this, lives its life, it's either going to be patched or it's going to be used as a rag, make an excellent rag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Deborah presented my set of towels to me 10 years ago, like 10 or 12 of these, I said, I think they're so nice. I don't think I could bring myself to using them. And she said, please use them, and please use them out.
Right.
And you had told me about someone else that you had visited who had one of your towels,
Yeah.
and it even had a hole in it from being burned,
Yeah.
and they were just using it. And you said, as the creator of this thing,
Yeah.
how beautiful it was
Yeah.
later. And that was really the motivator to me. So I just did as you said, and even when I make curry, sometimes there's turmeric stains on them. I throw them in the washing machine, but I iron everything.
Oh, I know.
And
you make everything look beautiful.
Well, it's an inspiration to iron them because of where they came from. And now some of them do have holes in them, and some of them are getting threadbare in places.
Right.
But I have thought that I will use this until it's a rag.
Right.
And every single day I use them.
Yeah.
So I do think like what I got out of it was such a richness of this mundane task of drying dishes.
It's true.
Was made so beautiful by this.
Yes, we do have to think about that.
These are
rag. Yeah.
This is a small sample of a type of like a mat that you would put on the ground made out of rags, and these are the rags, right?
Yes.
And this is the warp.
That's the warp. Yeah.
Look at that. So people have probably seen this before, but I don't know if people realize that historically these were made to use up bits of cloth.
Yes.
And this is the same but much finer. And this is these are table mats that sit on Deborah's table downstairs. Look at these.
Yeah. And this pattern is based on a carpet that I saw in a book, a 19th century carpet that was a rag carpet, but I kind of scaled it down to just make it into a placemat. And then I had the good fortune of being able to make this pattern into a full-size carpet for a historic site.
Really?
Yeah. So that was kind of neat to take that, because it was always in the back of my mind, because I wanted to do it, because you see the checkerboard sort of effect.
Yeah, I don't know if they can see that. You have to really look.
Yeah.
But there's a checkerboard.
Yeah, because there's a lot of distraction with the colors and everything. But yeah, you can kind of see like this dark, it's a little bit of a checkerboard area. So I did it as a carpet for a historic site. Yeah.
Do you think we can go upstairs to where all the magic happens, please?
We sure can.
Okay, let's
just up there.
Just up there, up the narrow stairwell.
Yes. Should I lead the way?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Always a thrill to watch Deborah work. Deborah, what's on the loom?
Well, something very special. It's a beautiful wool that comes from Peterborough County in Ontario. And it's a wide herringbone with a pink accent stripe that's going to go vertically and horizontally like a window pane. It's for somebody who wants a winter coat in this wide herringbone with the pink accent stripe.
This just looks spectacular on the loom. And every time I come up here and see whatever it is Deborah's working on, it's kind of incredible to see it come to life, because I can see the warp, but then as Deborah's weaving over here, you just see it growing. And one of the things that people might not realize is that there are treadles under the loom. How many do you have on this one?
Well, I have it because potentially this is a 12 harness loom.
Yes.
But I have it pared down to 4 harnesses.
Yes.
So whatever I'm doing, I pare it back to that. So I only have the 4 treadles set up.
Yes.
So I just have set up whatever I need, and then I take back what I have. So And this is, you know, basic twill in the herringbone pattern, and you just kind of follow your basic like twill pattern.
When Deborah's talking about treadling and a pattern, the pattern on the cloth is dictated by what harnesses go up. And these harnesses going up and down are controlled by Deborah's feet. And that's what's actually creating this pattern. So from here, these are controlled by, if we go under the loom, seeing Deborah's feet on whichever treadles she needs to press down to create the pattern. And that what that's doing is it's lifting up and separating certain parts of the warp from the other ones and creating a kind of V.
Yeah, it's called a shed.
A shed into which the shuttle will fly. So the shuttle flies across, and then she presses another sequence of treadles and it closes. And that is how she creates all these patterns for the cloth.
So you see that I wove a couple of inches of green.
Yes.
So that's just to make sure that there's no errors. And then to make sure that, you know, you're getting everything straight. And even this beginning part, there's still some little adjustments to make. Like there are a few little flaws there. And what I like to do too, once I kind of weave a couple of inches, is I like to do a check to make sure I've got the right threads per inch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Because like, you see, I'm just beating it.
Yep.
And I could be beating it hard or soft. So we just want to make sure. So we'll just, you know, count every weft thread just to make sure that I'm on track. And then once I've kind of got a sense of, okay, that's good. And also you use all your senses. So you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, visually that looks good. And, you know, with a twill, you're looking for a 45-degree angle. So you're looking for that. So once that matches up, then you're good and you're starting your yardage. And then I'll do spot checks throughout it, because I can come and sit here and maybe not, you know, have the same touch and feel. So I'll just kind of I'll weave another inch and I'll just do another check to make sure that I'm on track. And, you know, do I need to make some adjustments? So that's something that you really need to be on top of. And then the other thing is too, I'm just weaving this. So right now I've got these pink stripes. The idea is to do a window pane. So then I'll have to introduce the pink in there and then just establish how many picks I want in that square. And typically, if you've got, like I've got 2 3/4 inches in width, I would probably want to do a little more than that in my weft.
When you talk about the measuring the threads per inch and that you could be off, is it like knitting where there's the tension and then you do your little swatch and you count to make sure, like you can adjust it to be tighter or looser? Is that?
Yes, that's it.
Because you could beat down tighter or a little lighter?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. you could make this like a lot denser, so it wouldn't be, it's just with this kind of fabric, if you weave it too tightly, the wool doesn't have the opportunity to bloom, because after you subject like wool to water, it just wants to expand out a little. And you know, people that knit, they'll know that it just sort of fills out and fills in those little nooks and crannies. So that's what you want to. And if you weave it really tight and dense, you've lost the potential for that bloom to happen.
It's always surprised me seeing it on the loom, because it almost looks kind of gauzy.
It does.
And at first I thought, oh, this
I know.
this looks much more delicate than tweed.
Yeah.
And then when the cloth has been finished, when you finished it and fold it and then it arrives, it's so different.
Yes, yes. And if I wove it too tight, it wouldn't have that ability to bloom up, and the fibers would just be too locked down.
Yeah.
And it's also, when you have like different weave structures, like this herringbone, it's just kind of a medium sort of weave for tacking down the fibers. So you've got like the fibers sort of, that's tacking that down in this direction and this direction. So some weave structures are very dense, like this goes over 2 and under 2. So it kind of keeps everything kind of in place, like less so than like plain weave, which is over under. So.
This is a good point to mention to people. When we look at this cloth today, like if you went to a department store and you were picking out a coat, usually what we're looking at is the pattern, which purely from a consumer standpoint now, we're looking at it purely from an aesthetic point of view.
Right.
Whereas when Deborah talks about this tacking this under and it going on a diagonal, historically, these weave structures came out of function. They were designed because of the use. And can you talk a little bit about tweed? Like what tweed was used for, why?
Yeah, like tweed is really an outdoor fabric. It's something that you wear when you're out, like a lot. When we think about a climate that is sort of maybe a little rainy, a little humid. And so when you finish the cloth, and like I said, all the little fibers get to knit together and make a surface. When you wear that out in wetter conditions, if you get rain on you, it's just going to remain on the surface and not really penetrate in. So it's an ideal fabric for people that work outdoors.
This thing about the fiber that I think is so beautiful, something that we don't really think about now, is tweed made from wool from sheep that are growing in Scotland.
Yeah.
And then worn in that part of Scotland means that if the sheep can be outside in cold, wet weather, they have a fleece that is keeping them warm, that they suit the environment. And then if the humans raising those sheep wear the same wool, it's appropriate for that climate. So what is so beautiful about the tweed that you're weaving right now is this is Ontario wool.
Yeah.
These sheep are out winter and summer in our climate, and this jacket is going to be worn in Ontario.
Yes.
And it's so special because it will keep the wearer warm in kind of the perfect way.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's so well designed right down to the sheep. And like we were saying, like there are different sheep breeds. So this is a breed that has a lot of merino genetics in it. So you get this nice ability to have this little hazy felting on the surface because it's a fine wool.
Yeah. You have the fleece. Is this the fleece of this wool?
Yes, actually, it's these two.
Those two.
Yeah, so I'm going to put this one aside for now. We can talk about that one later.
So what do we have here?
Yes, look at the crimp.
What kind of sheep is this?
This is Norboulet, And it's a kind of breed type that my friend Allison, and Rajiv has been to the farm to meet Allison, and sheep.
And her Allison's sheep.
Yes, and adorable pictures with Rajiv and sheep. So this is her wool, and you can see the staple length. So usually at the mill, they kind of measure it from the heel of their hand up to there. So that's a good like 3-inch staple that you want. And you want a uniform sort of crimp in it. That's the little curl in it that you see. And so this is the white.
And when it gets washed and cleaned and spun, it looks like this in here.
Yeah.
And then this is the warp.
That's the warp.
Look at that beautiful.
Yes. The magnificent thing about Allison's sheep is that even the dark stuff tends to be fine, fairly fine quality. Because you do find with the darker wool, it does tend to be a little coarser than the white stuff. But still, you can feel it, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Like you can feel the lanolin in it.
When Deborah talks about the length of the staple and how it has to be a certain length for it to be ideal to send to the mill to have it spun into thread, Deborah, you were telling me something that I didn't think about, or that I didn't really know about. In modern textile production, you were saying that like when they raise sheep now for mass-produced wool, even if the sheep has a long staple or something that's a good length, you were saying they chop it up.
Yeah, it gets kind of cut up, and you can see that in the yarn.
Yes, like commercial yarn.
Yeah, commercial yarn, you can see it, how it's like, see that red cone right there?
Yes.
Yeah, so this stuff, so if we can get, see how easy that is to pull apart?
Yeah.
And then, so this is a 2-ply.
Yep.
So if we take that, and then if we start to like pull it apart, you can see how short the fibers are. Like they're kind of minuscule.
And this is because the fibers have been chopped up.
Yeah.
And Deborah,
I think it's to make it just everything consistent at the mill.
Yeah.
And what you make is going to be the same Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever.
And what that means is that you can buy the sweater for $12.99. What I would love to ask people to do is to think about that. To know, because you probably don't know about this. You probably are not thinking of your wool sweater down to the fiber. So you can buy the $12.99 sweater, but after its first wash, because the fiber is so small, you'll have pills all over it.
Yeah.
Or you're working out or you're skiing, and within 2 weeks there's a hole in the elbow because the fiber itself is not strong enough to withstand all your elbow bending that it makes a hole. Whereas this is so different from this. Yeah. But you see this thread and you see this thread and you think, well, they're both woolen thread. Yeah. And you wouldn't know. And this is where my conversations with Deborah help me to inform how I think about mass-produced cloth. You and I don't know this stuff. And we're not meant to know this stuff because we're meant to be lured into buying the $12.99 sweater. And when I see the fact that you're able to produce cloth and towels and carpets, and it goes back to this, it really does make me see and think about cloth in a very different way than walking into a store and buying it off the rack.
Yeah, it's just like when you look at that end to end, that's the fiber.
This is just the fleece, right?
Yeah, sheared off the...
Look at that. There's the thing. That's all fiber, and then that would get twisted.
Yeah, and it's so strong.
Into a yarn. And now if we hold the red beside this.
Yeah.
Let's just hold them side by side. Those are both 2 threads. But let's pull. I am pulling, and I am pulling hard.
That's really easy. I always equate this to like tissues.
Kleenex. Yeah, like a something you'd blow your nose with.
Yeah, and even like, okay, let's be more fair. Let's take the two. You saw how easy that was. So this is now 2-ply.
That's from off the spool.
So 2-ply, and Rajiv is trying his best.
I'm trying my best to pull, and I'm pulling. I'm really
That was
there.
so easy.
So I had to really pull.
Yeah, and you've been pulling at this like we did this 4 times. But yeah, and this is the stuff at the mill. Like, this stuff is really strong. Using this as your basis for spinning versus those little wispy things, like it's not respectful to the sheep.
No,
like,
it isn't.
The sheep grew more than that.
Yeah, but people don't know. I mean, it gets disguised, and all for the sake of selling a cheap sweater and making huge profits, and then ending up in the garbage a year from now when it has holes in the elbows. Going from this and this to this right here is, I think, no one will argue that it is truly a labor of love. And Deborah, I feel personally so fortunate to be able to bring your work into my life on a daily basis, to be able to wear, look, this shirt that I'm wearing made from something that really, truly, you just care so much. It's so evident.
Honestly, I couldn't do it without customers like you and friends. You're a friend, but also a really loyal customer too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to share this with people, just so that they know, and even if they're not going to purchase something that's handmade, I think it helps to just know when you're trying to decide what to buy to put on yourself as a garment. Maybe people will think a little more about investing in something that's made of really good quality, that's really going to last.
Yeah, and it is expensive, but for people, and I do certainly, I buy vintage.
Yes.
Because what I do when I shop, like, this is a vintage linen little jacket. And when I buy, I think you do this too, the first thing I do is I just kind of scan everything and I zero in on the fabric.
Yeah.
And if the fabric looks interesting and sturdy, then I go in for a closer look.
Deborah, this has been, as always, so educational, so informative, and so inspiring. Thank you so much for allowing us to come up here and see your work, and for having us.
Oh, no, I never. This is just an honor.
Thank you.